This podcast is a chance for me to sit down with so many great people that I've met over the years and get to know them better. I get to ask them a lot of questions about what they do, both for work, what they do personally, and maybe learn a few life lessons along the way. It's a really fun sort of coffee conversation, and I'm hoping you'll grab a cup of coffee and join me. Hey everyone, I am here with my friend JT, John Thompson. He works for one of my favorite companies that you probably already know about, Huckberry. He is a copywriter, and I'm pretty excited to have a conversation with him. We were just talking off camera about how fun it'll be to explore a podcast with someone on the creative side. A lot of the times when I'm doing these podcasts, I'm talking to people more on the brand marketing side. So this will be really fun for him and for me, and sort of explore a little bit more from the creative side. So welcome, JT.
Yeah, Sean, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
So been a big fan of Rotary all these years. So
yeah, it's just so great working with you guys. It's really fun. A couple things too. Does a lot of work for arguably my second favorite newsletter outside of Rotary, which is the journal, the journal for Huckberry, which is it's really, really good. I highly recommend that you sign up for it. It does a tremendous job of marrying commerce and content, pretty much better than anyone. So it's one of those few emails that I actually look forward to on a daily basis. And he also has Live a Little, which is a very cool Substack newsletter, which I'm very interested to talk about. Not only his newsletter, but just like the world of Substack, which is something that I'm diving into. And that may take up the whole hour, JT. We'll see. But anyway, so all right, man. So tell me a little bit about your path to copywriting, just like copywriting in general, and then how you got to Huckberry.
yeah, so I started at Huckberry here at the end of last summer as a copywriter. My path into copywriting is a little different than maybe some professional copywriters these days, but I started out of college writing as a freelancer. I fell into writing about men's style and grooming and fashion, and so on one hand, I was doing some very simple copywriting for a few clothing brands to start out. And then I was contributing to a website called themanual.com.
Oh yeah.
It was owned by Digital Trends.
Yep.
hmm And over there, I was kind of doing a lot of commerce content and product roundups. And so I was working a lot with brands and PR agencies and doing that sort of thing. So kind of fast forward through the years, I fell into commerce writing and commerce content at a few different publications. One at BroBible.com for a few moment in time, and then at Men's Health,
cool.
where I lived in New York City for a time. And it all kind of came to a head where, I was looking for some sort of adventure or something. And Huckberry is always been one of my favorite brands throughout that time. And they were looking for a copywriter, and I felt like I had some expertise to lend. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Funny story. I worked very briefly for Men's Health too. Back when I was.
That's right.
Yeah. Back when I was, when I started my adventure as a consultant, I knew the guy that was he was the associate publisher at the time, and he had me come on and kind of run ad sales as the quasi ad director until he found a full-time hire. So that was pretty funny. I was in the same office as you. Rodale's pretty cool. I liked it. But when I did it, I'm much older than you. So when I did it, it was back in 08, 09, when generally print still had a pretty decent foothold, so it was, the web obviously was there, but it was a little different then. The company's changed a lot, but it's still probably the de facto men's health fitness site out there, right? If you think about it, they still have that pedigree, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your responsibilities for Huckberry, just in a general sense.
Yeah, so my responsibilities at Huckberry, I kind of describe it as anything and everything that has words on it, I touch at some point. That can go from our email newsletter to something as small as our product descriptions to ideating campaign work for taglines and write-ups that you might see. So a campaign that went live recently was the new Luca shoe relaunch that we did with our leather footwear.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, we had Flint and Tinder Spring 25. And those are two examples of campaigns that I kind of worked on and helped bring to life. So anything small, large words you see around Huckberry or on the site, there's somebody on the copy team touching it.
Yeah, so like in the case of Flint and Tinder, right? It has kind of its own presence on the site. So does Welland. I own a lot of Flint and Tinder and Welland. So I feel like
Yeah.
they have their own kind of like identity within Huckberry. When you go there,
Yeah.
obviously you go to their product pages. So a lot of that work is yours.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, Myself and we have a copy team of four total.
Okay.
So sometimes I am writing it standalone, but we have editors and we work very collaboratively together, and we keep it all the same voice. So
Right.
it's sometimes hard to determine who's who writing it, which is good.
No, that's actually really good, right?
But
Do you
yeah,
find that that's just a separate question? Do you find that's a challenge as people come in that they sort of have to, I don't know, rethink about the way they write so that you're all sort of consistent in your voice, or is generally that not a difficult thing to do?
you know, at certain places it is. I think it depends. At Huckberry, we keep things very conversational, and most of the people that work there represent the brand in some way. It's part of their
Right.
lifestyle, and
Yeah.
for me, it was a natural transition into it because I felt like my writing aligned a lot already with what
Yep.
we were talking about and how we speak.
Yep.
So at Huckberry, it's fairly easy. At other companies, maybe not so easy.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think that's right too. I mean, I know just from following some of the work that you do, obviously you do kind of live the brand. You're definitely like an outdoor guy, you're a running guy. So I
thank you.
have to think that that makes it easier for you to sort of write organically and in the voice of Huckberry, which is very cool. I also think Huckberry is great too because the identity of Huckberry is very specific. I think
Yeah,
you know what you know. I used to say all the time, I still do. A lot of the times when I see things and I don't know if they're Huckberry, I say chances are they are because you guys have a very specific identity. So that speaks a lot to it too. That's great. Um,
Mhm.
uh, do you so do you find again that when you're writing, sort of organically, you're writing and it just aligns with Huckberry's brand and values, or does like Huckberry have some sort of specific roadmap that you all need to follow, certain things you need to think about each time you write? Or again, is
Yeah,
it more that all of you kind of live the brand so it comes through naturally or organically?
yeah. We are constantly refining voice for the times and figuring out what everybody is talking about and speaking about. So I guess to elaborate more on that, we have a voice guidelines of how we talk at Huckberry.
Okay.
10, 15 years ago, it was different. And now as time changes, we're speaking to a much broader audience of people who shop at Huckberry, people who have known the brand for years, but also a lot of new customers coming in.
Yep.
And so we have a lot of documents and pieces of paperwork in place that we kind of go through and meet with on a regular basis to refine and make sure we're all kind of on the same page of what these guidelines are of what we're writing to. From a personal standpoint of writing to Huckberry, a lot of what I kind of give comes from the gut and prior knowledge of what I have.
Yeah.
So being a guy that shopped at Huckberry prior, somebody who really loves the brand and lives the lifestyle, I feel like I have an intuition about what might speak to another customer or what might not. So there is um, a dual duality there, I guess, going on between how I approach it, and I think a lot of other people also writing for the company do.
Yeah, I could see that, the idea that when you write for it, because you yourself are so kind of aligned with the brand and the customers are, it's almost like speaking to your buddies, right? It's kind of like it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
It's not like you're
Yeah.
writing for something that you have no interest in, which would be much harder for a
Yeah.
job writing, copy for Pfizer or something. You know what I mean? Just something that doesn't sort of
Yeah.
align. So that's really cool how that comes through.
We,
Let's spend a few minutes talking about the journal. I'm a big fan of the journal. Like, tell me from your perspective the role that the journal plays within the ecosystem of Huckberry. I mean, obviously, it's a newsletter, and certainly it provides a lot of branding for you. But tell me, is there anything else that you guys think about, and what sort of the mission of it is? I'd love to
yeah.
hear a little bit more.
Yeah. The journal is really, I think it's a testament to Huckberry's commitment to staying true to the audience. A lot
Mhm.
of times, it's a living, breathing publication within Huckberry. And sometimes you might go to another brand and they might have a journal or a blog of some sort, but it's not quite as built out, and it's, it's not quite as built out, and it's not quite as far reaching. At another company, they might just be over there talking about like what's new and
Yep.
um, very targeted about the company itself.
Yeah.
Whereas Huckberry at the journal, David Gravett is over there and the content team, and they're ideating stories talking about, the 11 books you should be reading like this spring, or, the 50 best swimming holes in the whole United States to go explore. So there's much more beyond just us over there using it as an amplifier to talk about new product and what's going on. It's a place of like real interest. And so we have the journal there as a springboard, and it also kind of just feeds into the newsletter and what makes it so good. Also, in our email newsletters, we're talking about new product, we're talking about exclusive stuff, we're showing you the brand, but at the same time we're spending a lot of time showing you discovery led content. We're trying to show you what is being new and published over at the journal, and really kind of making it a mini publication breaking off from the journal on the site itself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like you guys do a great job. Obviously, first and foremost, right, with the journal and the newsletter, you want to be thinking about commerce, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to sell product, but I also feel like you
right.
guys push a very specific mission. You sort of embrace this mission of, fun, outdoor, living your best life. And so it really comes through.
Yeah,
I would say totally. It's a way more robust sort of experience for people outside of a normal, not a normal, but other sort of commerce led blogs that you see that are going to be much more focused on the products themselves. You guys just,
yeah,
again, I say it all the time. You do a really good job
yeah.
of mixing both of them, which is awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, it's great. Do you have anything like you've done recently, like a certain project where you're like, man, like I really nailed that? Or, you know what I mean? Like something, it
Yeah.
could have been a while ago too, just something you really loved, you were really proud of. I'm sure you're proud of all of your work,
Well,
so don't take it the wrong way.
I'm totally proud of everything I do, and
For
I'm
sure.
everywhere at the same time, nowhere. So it's hard for me to say what I've written 100% is me, because we work so good and closely as a team.
Yep.
But a few campaigns I think I had mentioned earlier, like Flint and Tinder Spring,
Yeah.
that's probably my favorite house brand of Huckberry. So getting ready to work on that. They shot the campaign in Marfa, Texas. We had this huge um, campaign shoot behind it. So to put the copy with it and make that a full living, breathing thing was awesome. Another thing I love to do is when we onboard some of these newer brands in the past year or so that are much more elevated and heritage. A couple examples, I guess, like Barber or
Yeah.
Drake's
Yeah.
or Paraboot. These are not cheap, but they are brands that have been around for decades and decades, some over 100 years. And so to kind of speak about those and introduce them to a Huckberry customer that might not be as familiar or might just be coming to it for the first time, it's really cool that that I get to kind of explain and give them a rundown of like why you should be looking at like a Paraboot Derby, or why you should be getting like a Barber rain jacket over, something else.
That's a great question. Sorry. Like
Yeah.
Barber. Okay, Barber comes in and becomes part of the Huckberry ecosystem, right? Barber has its own positioning as a brand, right, outside of
Yeah.
what they did for Huckberry. And then when they come in, how important is it for you to sort of tweak their positioning to make sure that it's more aligned with Huckberry? Or do you feel like that happens a lot more naturally? Because usually I would assume the brands, or I kind of know, all the brands that you pick to be part of the Huckberry ecosystem are usually pretty closely aligned. But do you ever find that you have to work with the brand to say like, hey, this is your position, but you know what? We need to tweak it a little bit so it feels like it's more of the Huckberry ecosystem?
Uh, you know, as far as those heritage and more elevated brands go, I don't think there's much that needs to be done. And maybe there has been in the past with other brands, but I know we have a very like robust buying team that goes in and presents before they're even going to pull the trigger on buying any of that product, or reaching out to the brand before we get it. So there's a tedious process of making sure we're aligned there. And so the job really
Excuse me.
the job there really when we get it is to make sure we're letting the customer know and educating them about it, and
Right.
why is this why is this rain jacket maybe $500, and why can't I just go get something lesser? There's plenty of great rain jackets, $100 to $200, but there's nothing like a barber out there. And so really what we kind of talk to and what I try to do is speak to the history, speak to, the origins and like how long this is going to hold up. And, this is really, I don't really have to do too much tweaking from the brand to Huckberry because the Huckberry guys get it. It's just
Yep.
letting them know and educating it a little bit.
Yeah, and you also have the benefit, right, that generally if Huckberry brings a brand to the audience of Huckberry, you're a trusted voice. I mean, it's a lot of the same way that
Yeah.
we think about the things that we introduce to our readers through all of our newsletters. The idea is by now they trust us, right? So if we put something in front of them, they tend to think, well, it's got to be good. It's got to be of high quality if the Rotary
Yeah.
guys were willing to put that in front of us. So I know it's got to be the same way for Huckberry, which is good, right? To be
Hmm.
able to lean on that a
Absolutely.
lot more, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, do you? What do you do? What tools do you do to think about the audience or an understanding of the audience? How do you? We were talking earlier that you are naturally a customer. I'm on the older end of it, but I'm naturally a customer, right? So a lot of the things that I like, I align with through the Huckberry brand. But is there anything
Yeah.
else that you look at? Any other tools? Any other things you dig into to get a better understanding of what the audience is like?
Yeah. I am constantly scanning and reading what I would encompass as like the men's lifestyle space. So that touches on health and wellness. It touches on culture and movies. It touches on even like fashion trends and stuff that's coming new up the pipeline. There's a lot of research and development, I would say, going into it and looking at what competitors are writing about and what products are hot at these other brands that people seem to love so much. Like there are some really great uh, staples and style that people reach to, whether it's like a specific workout short or there's a specific polo out there. And us at Huckberry are like, oh, how can we, what about that is selling so good and what makes it so good, both from a
Right.
product standpoint, but also from a marketing standpoint.
Yep.
Um, so I'm constantly looking around, kind of scanning the landscape, um, reading a ton. And the good thing is, all that reading is stuff that I enjoy already. So it's not
Yeah.
homework to me. It's stuff
Yeah.
I was doing before,
That's right.
regardless. So
Yep.
watching TV, watching movies, etc. As far as tools go, in our newsletter, I curate our recommended reads. It's called a section called diversions. So at the end
Yep.
of each email newsletter, you can see a few recommended reads from a few different places on the internet to kind of check out. And so what I love to do with that is I love to look at the data through like Looker or just looking through some link tracking and kind of breaking that down into topics of where people are going, what sources they're going to. So, are people going to Instagram and YouTube a lot more often than direct web publisher? Are people looking at health and wellness this week over, cars or watches? So there's a lot of data being broken down within those recommendations at the same time.
That's interesting, right? So I want to ask you a little bit more about this.
Yeah,
We use the data that we gather from our own ESP to email service provider audience to understand. We can look at the content that we curate, right? And obviously, we can see which performs best over others, and that leads
yeah.
us to say, "Oh, this is the type of content that really resonates." You're saying that you have a platform or a tool that allows you to look beyond the content you're bringing in, but actually find sources that these audiences are interested in to sort of gather from?
Yeah, it's probably pretty rudimentary. I mean, my tools are not super elaborate, but something as simple as putting some UTM tagging links on those to see where they go, and then
Okay.
having someone build me a board and like Looker Studio to like look at data. We have a really talented team that puts those Looker boards together to kind of interpret everything at the
Oh,
company.
that's
So
cool. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Yep. That's very cool. I
yeah,
like that. Okay. How do you define like I know how we define success, right? We're a revenue led newsletter and I'm the revenue guy. So I'm always thinking about, well, if we're hitting our revenue numbers, we must be doing well, right? It's kind of easy. How do
yeah.
you define success on your end for the copy that you're writing and the work that you're doing? Do you have specific measurements that you're set against, or is it just sort of kind of an organic sense of like what's working and what's not?
The big pie in the sky is the company make money or not? But at the
Right.
same time, it can be very, sometimes it can be hard to really make sure that's front facing. But at the end of the day, you are a business and you are there to make money, not lose it. At
Yep.
the same time, I think from a copy and creative standpoint, there's a focus on maintaining that brand integrity. There's a focus on not losing any like authenticity. And
Yep.
so that's where we kind of, it's a very vague gray space sometimes, but and it
Right.
can lead to a lot of conversations. We maybe spend 20 minutes talking about a sentence or a word, but in that looking to detail about how we're speaking, you know, we really kind of reiterate like this is where we're at and how we were talking about the brand and speaking about it. And we don't really want to let up or veer too far off the path because one thing leads to another, and it's, that's how the wheels fall off and how you kind of forget about maintaining the brand itself down the road. So
Yeah, it makes sense. So again, for you on the creative side, you don't really have any specific metrics that you look at like we would, like when I say we would, when anybody would when they're thinking about revenue marketing and advertising
yeah.
or exposure, right? There's no like you don't necessarily do you use like you write. I know you write a lot of the you write
Hmm.
all the diversion content. You ever look at that to sort of do you measure against that to show what has done really well in terms of clicks and views, or
Yeah.
is that sort of like secondary, or is that really like a true metric that you use to figure out what content to bring in?
We're looking at clicks year over year. We're looking at click through rates, and we have some
Yep.
specific numbers that we like to hit. And um, Huckberry, it's not so hardcore and rigid, but over time, we want to maintain that average and baseline, and we set them for a reason.
Yep.
And then, on the email side, as far as the email as a whole, we're looking at click through rates. We're looking at making sure, I think click through rates kind of illustrate like how healthy the email list is, and
For
then
sure. Yep.
making revenue through the email also, but
Yep.
making sure the email list is engaged and healthy and not just going out to this void or super messy on the inside. So we are looking at a lot of breakdown data year to year and a lot of the click through rates.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Talk about SEO. Funny story. I used to work for. I'll tell you a quick story about my experience with SEO
yeah,
years ago. While I was working as a sales consultant, I went to work for a company called Heavy. Heavy was a company that just really mastered SEO. Like, I don't know how to explain it to you, but like anything in the news, if you'd ever go to the front page of Google, you would see like Washington Post, New York Times, Heavy. Like, it was amazing. They were
hmm,
always on the front page. They were always they were always getting huge traffic for anything related to news. And I knew the owner really well, good guy. And I went and talked to him about maybe trying to learn how to write for SEO. And
yeah,
I was supposed to start up a music division for him where I would hire music writers, and I learned their whole process of writing for SEO. But one of the best stories that ever came out of that is that the reason he did that is he pays all of his writers on performance. It's really smart, right? So they don't get paid
mm,
at the time, at least. They didn't get paid salaries. They got paid if you drove a certain amount of traffic to your story and we generated revenue from that on those pages, you got a portion of that. And there was one
yeah,
person, this girl, who just consistently outperformed everybody all the time. And one time I asked her how she was able to just consistently outperform everybody on the site. And she said, because they're all about speed, right? So if they see something in the news, they're all about how quickly can you get a story up. And, as you know, John, the difference between a minute or two is probably hundreds of thousands of impressions sometimes, when something big happens.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
she used to say all the time, um, that when she was watching something, if she had a question, she just assumed that 50,000 other people had the same question. So she got it up really quick. And funny enough, we use that as the basis of starting Rotary. We started it with
yeah,
the idea like we'll find content on the web and we assume there's a few 100,000 other guys that would be willing to read the same content. But anyway, that's my SEO story. But for you, where does SEO play in the kind of ecosystem of the journal? Is it important still today? Do you think about that? You're a commerce site,
yeah,
so not sure how much that matters in terms of ranking. I'd love to know.
yeah. Well, I think to your point about those stories, this you can have a natural talent for SEO, and that's kind of that talent is you just have that intuition that other people are interested at the same time with you. So there's there's such a human element to SEO sometimes that people
Yeah.
forget,
Yeah.
and people break it down as like a data and numbers game, but really it's a sign of like who's looking for what, and giving those people the information they actually want to find, you know. Coming from my background, I've seen SEO go through many iterations, and even in the past 2 to 3 years, I feel like it's drastically changed. And I hear people talk about the early days of SEO and how much of a wild west it was, and
Yeah.
how you could how some people were able to game certain things. SEO
That's how Heavy
is
did it. Heavy
yeah,
was a master at writing within WordPress, and they knew
that's great.
exactly how to write and what to put in there. And
Yeah,
you remember back in the days of keyword stuffing and all that kind of crazy stuff that would go on. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what they did. Sure.
yeah. So SEO, I think, is still such a big part of the conversation, but people are just trying to figure out where it's going,
Yeah.
where it's going with AI and Google's own AI tools. But I still see people talking about it, and we talk about it ourselves. We even have our own person hired to work on SEO for the site, so we
Interesting.
are invested in it heavily. It's something that I've naturally used over the years and written within. So whenever I'm kind of writing on Huckberry, I'm kind of thinking in the background, if I'm going to be talking about something, if I can put in a little like keywords in some certain places to help with the site. I think we see that mostly in our brand page write ups and, um, speaking about the product itself in SEO. But once we kind of write it, we also have our SEO writer kind of go in and comb things and give it an assessment and then revisit it on a separate time. So we're really into still leveraging that, and it's not forgotten. And
Is
we get good
it,
results too when we search for certain products, and Huckberry comes up in the top couple of links. So that's how you know it works.
yeah. Is it still the same today? Is it still this idea that you are writing, to make sure that you include certain keywords throughout? Is it still the same sort of tools that you use as before, or has SEO changed a lot more since then? I mean, again, when I was writing for this, man,
Yeah,
this is like 2000, I don't know, 11 or 12. So it's been like 12 years.
yeah. I think there is that aspect of keywords and all the traditional SEO stuff you use, but I think what changes about it is making sure that it's human and it's good content.
Interesting. Okay.
Vague and interest as vague as that sounds, I follow two people on X, Lily Ray and Barry Schwartz, and they are just that's where I've got my SEO news for years from them because they're in the weeds on that and breaking down all that all the time. So really, what they kind of come down in their conclusion is just make great content, and then we can implement a few rules under it, and then see how it goes. But the
Yeah.
big pie in the sky these days is make good content that's human and not AI and
Yeah, that's amazing,
not
right?
useless.
As AI starts to evolve, how do you continue to sort of really position yourself as human? Which, by the way,
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
company, we do. We're always trying to figure out ways to like drive home the message like, hey, our newsletters are both written and put together by humans. There's nothing AI about it. And I think that that's going to continue to be a position for us, like
yeah,
you. So it's really interesting as that continues to evolve and AI takes on more and more of our lives. Like, how do you really sort of double down and really drive home the message that like we're human, we do this as a human?
yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
amazing. Yeah, it's funny.
yeah.
What do you? So let's switch gears a little bit. Where do you find inspiration for your writing? How do you approach writing? I would tell you, as an artist, I'm not an artist. I paint, but the way I think about
You're
painting,
an artist, Sean.
yeah, I don't know about that, but that's fine. I like to paint. Let's just put it at that, JJ. I like to
Yeah.
paint, but the way I approach it is that I make sure that I paint a little bit every day. Sometimes I paint for
Hmm.
45 minutes. Sometimes I paint for an hour and a half. Sometimes maybe I'm feeling particularly spunky and I paint for a couple hours, but I just try to do it every day. And I know that you can't help but get better at whatever you do if you put work into it day in, day out. Whatever, however you define getting better, but you definitely do. How do you think
Yeah.
about writing? Do you think about it the same way? How do you approach it?
I think that repetition and understanding what you're getting out of on a daily basis, as I get later into my 20s, I realize like how valuable that is to me. I don't always maybe get the immediate feedback after I'm writing, but I know if I write daily, there's something that I feel good about it. And then if I don't for a week or two, there's something that feels a little empty, and you're kind of like,
Yeah.
well, something's off, but put that. I can't really pinpoint it. So
No, man, I get that. I get that. I
yeah.
generally feel like if I don't paint and, define what you want, I feel
Mhm.
like that there are a lot of things I try to accomplish every day, but I feel like if I don't paint, I feel like, the day wasn't as fulfilling. For some reason, the
Yeah.
day feels off. I totally agree.
Yeah. So the real question also there is how do you feel like you're writing outside of if your 9 to 5 is you're writing all day? And
Yeah.
sometimes I used to struggle with that. And I'm writing all day regardless. Like I don't have enough time to write, or I'm so tired from writing today. I don't know if I'll
Yeah.
write tonight. So
Right.
the way I kind of get around that is, waking up early and doing some sort of writing, whether it's train of thought journaling. And
Yep.
I've had these books from the Artist Way for a few years, and at first I had followed the guide to it, but after doing that, I realized I just like the notebook that it comes with. It's a
Yeah.
big, huge notebook sheet with lined paper,
Oh, that's
and I was
cool.
like, I'm just gonna keep rebuying this notebook and do my journaling in there. So I have
Yeah.
some of these big, thick Artist Way journals of just train of thoughts with dates and notes on them through the last 3, 4, 5 years. So
That's
journaling is
a,
the big thing that keeps me inspired. And then writing on my Substack is another thing that keeps me
yeah.
inspired these days. Like you mentioned at the beginning, it's called Live a Little. And it's kind of this, I call it my creative sandbox to kind of talk about, whether anything and everything that I love about men's style and fashion and other topics included. So, having that to fall back on it keeps me very inspired as well.
Where do you, yeah, I had a lot of questions about that. Where do you find the
Yeah.
brands that you have on there? I just bought, funny enough, I wish you got credit for it, but I bought a shirt from a brand that you had on there. It's called Be a Good Person. I can't remember the name of the brand though. Shit.
Sweet.
What was the name of the brand? You featured it. I don't remember, but I totally saw it on your Substack, and I totally went and bought it.
Okay.
And it's a great shirt. But like where, because
Cool.
obviously a lot of those brands, some of those brands I can tell are in the Huckberry ecosystem, but a lot of them aren't. So how
Yeah.
do you find them?
Yeah. Um, a lot of them through it's just looking around on social media of people I follow and algorithm hitting me. A lot of
Okay.
looking around of people I've talked to over the years and checked out, and then a lot of organic conversation. So
Yep.
there are people at Huckberry I talk clothes and gear with all the time, and if I hear something in passing in convo or somebody says something, I go like, oh yeah, I need to remember that or write that down and come back to them. So it's a little mix of everything, but um, gosh, I've written about a ton of brands over the years and looked at a lot and talked a lot and talked to PR agencies pitching brands. So I've got
Yeah.
this kind of something in subliminally about all this information is back there that sometimes just surfaces when I see something or talk about it. I remember a certain brand or remember a certain product that I loved.
Yeah, yeah. I have a couple other
Yeah.
questions before I forget. I actually
Yeah.
reached out to Ben about this, and I'll tell
Mhm.
you, I own a gas station jacket. It's a gas station jacket. It's actually Imogene and Willie, and
Mm,
I have been desperate to try to find another type of gas station jacket like that. And I swear, if Huckberry made one, it would be such a huge seller. I have two jackets like it. I have a Imogene and Willie one, which is very cool,
yeah.
and then weirdly, Lucky Jeans a couple years ago randomly made a Guinness version of it, and it's like two of my
Okay.
favorite coats. So I
Okay.
want someone at Huckberry to create a gas station. It could be a Huckberry gas station jacket. It'll be the hugest seller ever. So let's make that
That's
our mission.
great.
All right.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. It's really
Like,
cool. I wear this Imogene Willie one all the time. Every time I wear it, people stop me like, "Where'd you get that jacket? Where'd you get that jacket?" It happens all the time.
real quick, you mentioned Lucky Brand too, and
Yeah,
I actually still like checking out what they have and going into the stores and seeing. So that's another thing is just going in and
yeah,
looking at stores to find stuff.
yeah, yeah, for
Whenever
sure.
I'm bored or whatever. I know I might not be buying stuff, but just to look around and check it out. So
Yeah, and you have so many
it
great
doesn't
stores in
surprise me.
Austin to do that too, right? It's very cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
funny, isn't it? What is your? I started reading. I started writing on Substack too. I did
Yep.
before, but I'm kind of doing it again. I'm not really sure what I'm doing with it yet. I like it up there, and obviously, I have the podcast. I have my company. I have other things, but like, how do you define? what is success for you with your Substack newsletter? How do you define? Obviously, I love the fact that everybody does their best work in the morning when you're freshest. So I love that you put
Yeah.
your own work first. I'm not to say that you don't do great work for Huckberry, but the fact that you
Yeah.
journal and you write for the field, I think is really smart. But how are you personally defining success on Substack? What makes you get up there and do it all the time?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm learning over there is uh, Substack is a authenticity gauge. It
I
can
think
tell
so.
if you're authentic or not. And I think
Yeah.
the best way to have any sort of success on Substack is to make sure you're doing it authentically and writing about stuff you care about and writing with passion. If you want to try and growth hack it, that's only maybe going to get you so far. And maybe there are people on there that have success, but like anything, I think it's the ones that you can feel and have the real passion behind it kind of go far.
Yeah, I
And
worry a little bit about that. I really like the platform right now. I
yeah,
worry that it's going to become a little more like LinkedIn. So I know
yeah,
people that write for LinkedIn and all. I know a guy
hmm
who's literally he writes a post every day, and he's part of 25 to 30 other groups that literally once
yeah,
he's done, he puts it in all those groups and they all go up and like it, and it inflates their likes and inflates their engagement. And I just think like that's not the right thing to do. I do find
no,
though that
no,
it's so interesting with Substack. I find in my feed, I don't know about you, but a lot of my feed is people just talking about the fact they just got their 20th subscriber or their 25th
yes,
subscriber. They're like, I don't want to see that. Like, it's okay. I don't know. I don't know. How do you feel about it? Like, I find like I went up this morning and the first
yeah.
four things I saw were people all excited about the fact that they got their, fucking 25th subscriber or whatever. But like, is that the point? Is that why we're on here? I don't know. It's weird.
That's what I would say is people gaming the Substack
Yeah.
notes algorithm because those are growth hackers there and they're there to kind of bait you into to give them a like or give them a subscribe. But that's not. I think there's so much gold behind all that noise going on. So
I'm sure. So
um,
how are you finding stuff up
yeah,
there? Is it just simply spending time up there and, or are you
you know,
getting recommendations that are good or are you just finding it on your own?
yeah. Substack used to be kind of difficult to navigate because discovering other newsletters was fairly difficult, and they've done really good, I think, in the past year, opening up some like recommended reading tools where you can kind of see through scrolling. They opened up a notes feed, which is essentially kind of their algorithm of seeing stuff, and you can discover a lot of content there.
Yeah.
Within my space of what I would just say men's lifestyle, there are people I follow and people I've talked to over the years that they know somebody or they're doing something on Substack. So whatever kind of niche you're in, it pays to. It's helpful to already maybe be inside of it because the chances are there are some people in
Right.
that small circle, and then you can kind of like discover it that way. Who's doing what inside that circle? So that's what I like about the discovery aspect, but it's sometimes difficult.
No, it is.
Yeah,
When I did it at first a couple years ago, I started a newsletter on there. And
yeah,
now that I started it again under a different name, I'm not really
hmm
doing a newsletter. I'm just doing notes. I'm trying to
yeah,
figure out whether or not I should actually build up. I don't know if I like being in there. I like discovering stuff. I
yeah,
don't really want to build another newsletter. Obviously, I do enough of that on my own, so I'm trying to
yeah,
figure that
yeah,
all out. It's funny, um, but
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but I like it up there for sure. But that's really interesting to hear that. I think you're right too. Like in the end of the day, if you just play in a sandbox long enough, like the right stuff comes along. You know what I mean? Like that's just and if you're doing it
I think
authentically and
so.
organically, right? Like you're just going to find the right things. So I totally
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. And writing, I guess what the big success for me on Substack is just to continue it. Don't
Yeah,
just kind of forget
yeah,
about it because there are
yeah,
so many things I've done over the years that, I say I'm going to start and I do it and then I forget about it 2 weeks later
yeah.
or whatever. So this is my long term. Let's make sure we got something down and, you know, maybe I'll get something out of it at someday. But I know if I continue to do this for the next couple of years, it's going to lead into some crazy body of work, and maybe it jumps me off into writing a book or something, or even bigger projects. So these are very just small. The goal is to continue the writing because it
I
makes me enjoy
100%
it.
agree. I think if you just
Yeah,
continue to write every day, like all of us, and you stick with it, just like this podcast or anything else,
yeah,
like it just kicks up dirt that you're not aware of. And pretty soon
Absolutely.
you find out things you didn't know, or you're introduced to somebody you didn't know. And it's just
Yep.
from, instead of having an end goal, it's just focusing on doing the daily work every day, and then things kind of reveal themselves. So like, I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, I got only a few minutes left for you. I think this is a great
All right.
question. What would you say to, it's not me, what would you say to like kids my son's age that want to be aspiring copywriters? What should they do?
They should uh, work hard and find topics they love to
Yep.
start there. If you want to be a writer, you have so many different people talking about you of how to go about it and how to approach it. You just need to eliminate the noise, I think, and focus on stuff you actually care about and find interest in.
Yep.
So whether you love baseball, you can start writing about sports. You could, if you have some obscure hobby, maybe like archery or something, you could start writing about that, and then you'll really kind of see how far that sort of takes you, and you'll really find out if you want to be a writer or maybe not, or maybe you want to just have writing as a hobby. I think when I started deciding I wanted to be a writer, I just kind of faked it. I started a WordPress in college, and it was a music blog,
Oh,
and I would
nice.
get on there and act like I was writing a daily music blog about somebody's song.
Yeah.
And I would go to this coffee shop with my brother in the mornings, and my brother he does social media, and so he would do social media work on his pages and stuff while I just sat there at the coffee shop and wrote up a quick 300 words. I don't know. I don't think maybe more than three people ever saw that, and that's okay because it felt real at the moment. And the writing, you got to get through all that to start really churning. So find a topic you like and really just kind of don't give up. Don't give
I
up
feel
on
like
writing.
you're, yeah, 100%. I feel like there's a great satisfaction too about just doing the work, right? You don't, not necessarily about how many people see it. So you're talking about this
Yeah.
music blog that you did. At the end of the day, maybe only three people saw it, but like you got great satisfaction, I'm sure, out of writing 300 words about some really cool song. It's the same,
Yeah.
again, it's the same way that I do about painting. Like I get such
Yeah.
great satisfaction every day about painting. I'm not painting for the idea of selling them or lots of people seeing them. It's
Hmm.
just like this. But again, if I continue to do it every day, like you do it every day, in my case, I started painting years ago and I painted with no intent on anybody seeing it. But now, like, I'm going to be showing stuff in a coffee shop next month. I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I've had a
That's
couple people.
amazing.
I've had a couple people come to me for commissions, which I'm like, that's ridiculous. But like,
There we go.
never intended
Yeah.
that, right? I just wanted to paint. So I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think for somebody, that's great advice. Just write.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Write what you love. How does AI play in your world? Like, how do you use AI? Let me tell you a quick story. Uh, I taught for about a year as an adjunct
Hmm.
professor at Temple. I taught persuasive writing. Isn't that funny? And the reason I did
Good.
it is because I was an ad guy and he wanted me to teach a class. I was like, well, I could teach that because it's about writing for sales. But when I
Yeah.
started, I asked everybody if they knew about AI and no one raised their hand. By the end of the semester, I said, anybody know about ChatGPT? And everybody raised their hand. And then I realized after that for me, I never figured out how to pivot from there. I just stopped teaching because I wasn't sure kind of what to do. But my sort of thinking was that ChatGPT could be like, in a way, the ultimate source for you to draft something. But then you really have to put it in your own voice. But I would love to know how you think about it. It's got to be in your world, right?
It's in my world. I think the potential is just so great. I'm bullish on AI.
That's
And
awesome.
and some writers are very scared about it, or
Yeah.
they're very fearful. But I think it really just kind of amplifies the taste you have using it, and that's kind of what takes time to build. Is if you're using AI to write about something, you want to, you need to have some sort of taste before you kind of just like let it do its thing.
Okay.
So if you're going to ideate headlines and give you 20 headlines, you need to be able to know what a good headline is and how to keep it tight
Right.
and how to
Right.
frame it.
Yeah.
And that's something I took me at least 3 years to learn, is how to write headlines for just in journalism. And
Yep.
now when I see it and gives me a list, I can go, that's not a good headline. And I go, but that one has like a good framework, or that
Yeah.
first word
Yeah.
is good. So let me start from there. And so it's really just, I use it as an assistant. And I think just give us a couple years and there's going to be just so many other great ways that it's going to be able to help in writing. And there's a website that I love to keep up with too on the state of AI. It's called every.to.
Okay.
and they have some really great writers and contributors kind of just talking about AI over there and how it impacts publishers and other industries. And
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
really kind of trust that site as like a source to kind of rely on and kind of get an idea of where the future might be going.
I think you're so spot on. The idea that you have to understand writing in order to use it to its best ability. So when I was teaching,
Yeah.
when I taught persuasive writing, if I had continued, I would have really stressed that you need to understand all the key elements of persuasive writing. And then if you use
Hmm.
ChatGPT and you can recognize those, it works in your favor. But if you can't recognize them, it doesn't. But all right,
Yeah.
that's a great thing. All right, my man. We took up most of your time. This was really fun. I knew it would be.
Yeah.
Super stoked to have you on the show, and I'll continue to follow your Substack. And obviously, you and I talk all the time, so just totally appreciate you having on.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me. And everybody go check out Huckberry, sign up for the email newsletter as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You got it. All right, buddy.
All right.
See you
Talk
later.
to you.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. Special shout out to Elijah who helped me put it together. I hope you liked it. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment in the section below, or you can reach out to me directly. And I hope you'll make it to the next one.